Chapter 21, Sincere Intentions. Xiaolan's mood wasn't particularly good. Lu Yong had a contact in the police station and had gathered some useful information. Those 3 men who committed the crime in broad daylight would likely face severe punishment. However, there was a new problem. Some people, for reasons unknown, had stirred up trouble by falsely accusing Xiaolan. They claimed she had a promiscuous lifestyle and had enticed those 3 men. It was as if they wanted to drag her into their mess and shifted the blame onto her, accusing her of being the instigator. Furthermore, the confessions from the police station indicated that those 3 men had been lured by someone's words. Xiaolan couldn't help but wonder if it was someone from her own family behind this. She had started to think that perhaps she wasn't really part of the Xia family and was an enemy's child raised within the family. That might explain why the Xia family was so intent on tormenting her, trying to prevent her from having a good life. When she thought about the near miss she had yesterday, almost being violated, along with the damaged eggs, Xiaolan's anger couldn't be contained. Since they were in the guest house, Xiaolan and her nephew planned to return home before discussing everything in detail. They also needed to thank Zhuangcheng and Conway for saving them. Lu Yong found a state-run restaurant, but the attitude of the waitstaff was lackadaisical, as if they were waiting for someone to repay a debt. Having been accustomed to modern-day service where the customer is treated like a god, Xiaolan was baffled by the restaurant's staff, who seemed indifferent and insolent. What made it even more absurd was that they were the restaurant's first customers of the day. The waitress haughtily asked, "Do you have food coupons?" Lu Yong shook his head and said, "No, we don't have food coupons. Just serve us 2 meat dishes." Normally, people who visited state-run restaurants would order something simple like a bowl of noodles, and having food coupons would get them a discount. The waitress realized that Lu Yong was a rural person, and her attitude changed. She gave a snarky snort and asked, "No food coupons means it's more expensive. What kind of meat dishes do you want?" Xiaolan, annoyed by the attitude, would have left if they could have found a higher-end restaurant in Anqing County. "Look, just bring us the food. Do you think we can't pay the bill?" Conway, with his Beijing accent, caught the waitress off guard, and her nose up in the air attitude vanished. She sneered, "Without food coupons, it'll be more expensive. What kind of meat dishes would you like?" Xiaolan was impatient with the rudeness and was tempted to turn and leave, but Anqing County had no better dining options than the state-run restaurant. "Oh, look at you. What are you saying? Just bring us the food. Do you think we won't be able to pay the bill?" Conway's Beijing accent left the waitress speechless. In today's world, Beijing residents were often viewed as superior because they were from the capital city. On closer inspection, among the 4 people in the group, everyone was better looking and more charismatic than the next. The waitress's arrogance evaporated, and she said, "I'll check with the kitchen." The waitress returned after a while and said, "Master Zhu in the kitchen mentioned that they have just received an 18-pound freshly caught catfish from Baishi Reservoir. Can you handle it?" Lu Yong, being a rural person, didn't think much of fish. When they caught fish in the countryside, people were often fed up with it. But since they were treating someone, they'd have to serve a big, more expensive dish. However, Lu Yong felt constrained by the haughty restaurant staff. He reluctantly nodded and said, "All right, we'll take it. And bring a few more dishes." "Uncle, 18 pounds of catfish should be enough," Zhuangcheng explained to Xiaolan. "Catfish that's too small or too big isn't good. Those under 10 pounds aren't fatty enough, and those over 20 pounds tend to have tough meat." An 18-pound fish is just right. Zhou Qing wasn't explaining this solely to Xiaolan, he was also subtly educating Lu Yong. Zhou Cheng's way of handling things didn't make people dislike him. Lu Yong had to admit that Zhou Qing was likable. He thought he was quite lucky not to have shown fear in front of these two young men from Beijing. Although 1983 was a time when most people struggled to make ends meet, Zhou Qing didn't seem like someone in dire financial straits. If they had ordered more expensive dishes, Lu Yong probably wouldn't have been surprised. When the 18-pound catfish was brought to the table, Xiaolan realized the excellence of a state-run restaurant in Anqing County. The fish was divided into 3 dishes and a soup. Half of it was thinly sliced and used in a fish hot pot, while the other half was made into fish balls and soup. The fish head was steamed with chopped chili, and the fish fillets were deep-fried and served with sesame and salt. One fish was transformed into 3 dishes and a soup, and each dish was served with plenty of side dishes. Lu Yong ate the tender fish without uttering a word. It wasn't that the fish wasn't delicious, it was that people from rural areas didn't have the skills or resources to prepare such dishes, and they were hesitant to use so much oil. This meal was definitely the most comfortable one Xiaolan had enjoyed since she arrived in 1983. However, the atmosphere during the meal was rather strange, mainly due to Kong Wei's odd behavior. Zhou Qing gave him a discreet warning, and Kong Wei finally raised his glass with a smile. Xiaolan understood that the staff at the state-run restaurant had probably informed them about her notorious reputation. She didn't mind it much. After all, they had just met by chance. If they looked down on her due to some rumors, then they could simply cut ties, and the 2 meals wouldn't be enough to repay their debt of gratitude. Once she got on her feet, she would express her gratitude properly and offer compensation. From then on, they could go their separate ways. With her chopsticks, Xiaolan picked up the most tender piece of fish belly and placed it in Lu Yong's bowl. Lu Yong raised his head, and Zhou Qing smiled at her. He had a really charming smile. Lu Yong couldn't help but feel that this yellow weasel wanted to steal his young chick right in front of him. He quickly interrupted the subtle flirtation and said, "Come on, let's drink. I'll raise a toast to both of you once again and thank you for saving Xiaolan." Zhou Qing raised his glass, and Kong Wei dared not refuse. Zhou Qing said sincerely, "When I first met Xiaolan, I felt a strong connection. Please don't be offended by my words. I'm just being honest. I know there are rumors about Xiaolan, but I've heard from Kong Wei that those are baseless. My family taught me not to judge people or situations based on hearsay, but to rely on my own feelings and judgments. Regardless of any preconceptions, I want to be friends with Xiaolan. So, please, let's enjoy this meal together." Even if Xiaolan had a history with someone else, Zhou Qing wouldn't mind. Regardless of her past preferences, she would surely prefer him in the future. Chapter 22, Smuggling? Zhou Cheng's words were impeccable, leaving Lu Yong at a loss for words. Xiaolan couldn't help but think, is this young man pursuing me? Zhou Cheng's youth reminded Xiaolan that she was only 18 years old and had her youth ahead of her, which brought her immense joy that was hard to contain. The large catfish was delicious, and the chefs at the state-run restaurant were skilled. The waitress's arrogance wasn't really justified. Xiaolan thought about those famous restaurants in the future where the owners could be equally irritable, yet customers still flocked to them. The delicate catfish slices were tender and not fishy. Xiaolan reluctantly put down her chopsticks. The fish was delicious, but Zhou Qing had spoken so sincerely that she felt the need to respond. She said, "Zhou, sit down and let's talk. Standing up seemed too formal, almost like negotiating a marriage with her uncle. I understand your intentions, she continued. My reputation isn't great, and I assume you've heard about it. Some things need to be resolved on my own. Only when I become strong can I withstand any attempts to tarnish my name. I'm not considering personal relationships for now. I hope to develop a healthy and lasting relationship independently. Thank you, Zhou. Regardless of how delicately she put it, her words were still a gentle rejection. Kang Wei involuntarily swallowed hard. He was afraid that Zhou Qing would flip the table. Zhou Qing had probably never been rejected like this before, and what's more, he didn't seem to mind Xiaolan's questionable reputation. Kang Wei had been worried that Zhou Qing would be furious or upset, but to his surprise, Zhou Qing sat back down and said, I understand your perspective. We've only known each other for a short time, and I'm not in a hurry. Don't feel burdened. Let's interact like friends, and let's enjoy this catfish. The chef at this restaurant is really skilled. Kang Wei couldn't believe it. Zhou Qing had accepted the rejection with such grace, and they both acted so naturally. Zhou Qing was quite generous, and Xiaolan was not awkward. Xiaolan was the most coquettish and charming girl Kang Wei had ever seen, but she had grown up in the countryside. Despite her vibrant personality, she also carried herself with the sophistication that only Beijing city girls had. Actually, she was different from Beijing city girls. Those young ladies might act coy and refined in front of others, but Xiaolan didn't. She was open and polite, neither servile nor overbearing. Kang Wei suddenly thought of a phrase, neither servile nor overbearing. He felt like he needed a bowl of fishball soup to calm his nerves. With the matter settled between the two young people, Lu Yong didn't want to intervene further. After all, Zhou Qing wouldn't be staying in Anqing County forever, and he'd leave sooner or later. Lu Yong was content, enjoying the catfish. The four of them finished the 18-pound catfish, and Zhou Qing left halfway to smoke a cigarette. When he returned, he had already settled the bill. This time, Lu Yong felt a little embarrassed. It's not a big deal, it doesn't matter who pays. What's important is that everyone enjoyed the meal. Zhou Qing said casually, as he truly wasn't short on money. However, in this era when people meticulously calculated even the cost of an egg, Zhou Qing's generosity was truly remarkable. The waitress took a discreet look at him and thought, this Beijing guy is really generous. If only he were my boyfriend. However, when she saw Xiaolan, she didn't dare to be so presumptuous. She couldn't honestly say that Xiaolan was less attractive than her. If Zhou Qing were her boyfriend, there wouldn't be much hope for others. Leaving the restaurant, Zhou Qing asked Xiaolan and Lu Yong what their plans were and if they needed a ride. Xiaolan shook her head and said, I need to buy some things. You've already spent a day with us, there's no need to escort us. Cars consume fuel, and one had to adapt to the lifestyle of 1983. She wasn't at a point where she could enjoy being chauffeured around yet. Zhou Qing understood and said, all right, take care on your way home. We'll be staying in town for a couple more days. If you need anything or want to meet up, you can find us at the guest house. Except for still calling Lu Yong uncle, Zhou Qing didn't bother him at all and left with Kang Wei. Lu Yong smiled. When the two were out of sight, he suddenly became serious and said they might be involved in smuggling, making money by licking the knife's edge. You never know when they could end up losing both their lives and their money. Xiaolan, don't be swayed by that guy's good looks and sweet words. Xiaolan wasn't surprised at all. Zhou Qing wore a Rolex, drove a heavily fortified truck, and had an inexplicable air of danger. It wasn't surprising to think that he might be involved in smuggling. What surprised Xiaolan was how Lu Yong, a simple farmer who made money by building houses and pigsties, could see through it. She asked, "Uncle, how did you figure it out?" "Uncle, are you really just a bricklayer? You bought a new bicycle, and now you're boldly standing up for them. Can you afford it with your bricklaying wages?" Lu Yong chuckled and changed the subject. "You're a clever girl. If you want to buy something, do it early so we can get back home soon." Xiaolan didn't press further with questions on the street. When she and Lu Yong arrived at the department store, they could see that the small county was supported mainly by two big factories. The department store wasn't large, and there weren't many customers at this time. Lu Yong thought Xiaolan was going to buy new clothes when she headed towards the clothing section. It was perfectly normal for a young girl to enjoy having new clothes, and he could afford a few meters of fabric that cost a few yuan. But Xiaolan surprised him by pointing to a colorful backpack with a small elephant on it and asked, "Comrade, how much is this backpack?" The saleswoman, who was knitting a sweater, didn't even look up and replied, "It's 10 yuan each. They came from Shanghai, so they're a bit expensive. I'll take this one. Please wrap it for me." The saleswoman finally cast a glance at Xiaolan. She didn't care who was buying the backpack as long as they could pay for it. Xiaolan paid, and then she told Lu Yong, "Let's go. Auntie told us to come home for dinner." Lu Yong, now realizing that Xiaolan had bought the backpack for Tao Tao, said, "It's too expensive. I saw a canvas one next to it, it's just as good. Kids don't need expensive backpacks. Your aunt said we can sew one with some fabric." Lu Yong grumbled about the expense, but deep down, he felt relieved. It wasn't because Xiaolan spent money, it was because she had become more considerate and thoughtful, thinking of her little cousin. Blood ties were strong, and it boded well for their future. When Lu Yong looked at the monotonous fabrics on the counter, he resisted the urge to make his own purchases. He thought he could come back later when he was alone. When Xiaolan and Lu Yong returned to Qijing village, Li Fengmei and Lu Fen hadn't come back yet. Lu Yong couldn't stay at home, so he went to help in the fields. Tao Tao was overjoyed with his new backpack and kept asking, "Sister Xiaolan, is this for me? Is it really for me?" Xiaolan decided to start cooking first. To be honest, the fish they had for lunch was a bit heavy on her stomach, so some physical work would help her digest it. She was uncertain about using the village's traditional stove, as she hadn't grown up with that experience. In her previous life, she had been poor, but she cooked on a coal stove and then later on a gas stove. She didn't have the experience of using a rural earthen stove. Fortunately, Tao Tao was there to help, and despite being only 6 years old, he often watched Li Fengmei cook by the stove. With Tao Tao's assistance, Xiaolan managed to cook the rice in a smaller iron pot. Underneath the rice pot, she cooked white radishes, while the other big pot was used for the dishes. Li Fengmei had sent half a pig's liver, which required some effort to prepare. Xiaolan was unfamiliar with this, so she didn't dare touch it. But apart from the pig's liver, they also had Christian carp, loaches, and other items at home. Cleaning loaches was a delicate task. Their slimy surface made them difficult to handle. Before cooking them, they needed to be rinsed with hot salt water. Xiaolan was busy and Tao Tao couldn't help but laugh as he saw the loaches all over the floor, offering no help to his sister. Finally, After preparing the loaches, Xiaolan cooked them together with tofu using dried chili peppers. She covered the pot, allowing the flavors to blend. Then she proceeded to clean the Christian carp. This was simpler, as she just needed to pick some scallions and cut some coriander leaves from behind the house. She could make a delicious dish of coriander-flavored Christian carp. When the people working in the fields came back, only the pig's liver had yet to be stir-fried. Auntie asked, "Is the rice ready, Xiaolan?" Meanwhile, at the Zhuangcheng County guest house, the main topic of conversation for Zhuangcheng and Conway was still Xiaolan. Chapter 23, A Woman with a Tarnished Reputation. Zhuangcheng and Conway made a trip to the countryside. They didn't even need to drive all the way to Dehukin village. They pulled over by the roadside and started chatting with the women working in the fields, who immediately began gossiping about the happenings in Dehukin village. There were two remarkable things about the Xia family in Dehukin village. One was that Xia Xiu, the eldest granddaughter of the Xia family, had been accepted into a university, becoming a rare success story from a rural family. She was considered a shining example for the local children. Very few people from the county got into university this year, and Xia Xiu is one of them. She's not just smart, she's also incredibly beautiful. She has an oval face, thick eyebrows, big eyes, and she braids her long, shiny black hair. Who wouldn't want to marry her? But she's already in a relationship with a university student. What a perfect match. The Xia family is truly blessed. I wonder how many incense sticks they burned at their ancestors' graves for this to happen. They finally produced a university student in the family. They've used up all the village's good luck. So, the other granddaughters in the Xia family aren't as impressive, then? Well, there's one who stands out, Xia Xiaolan. When it came to Xiaolan, the women's tone took on a hint of malice, and their eyes scrutinized Zhuangcheng and Conway. They wondered if that troublemaker Xiaolan was causing a commotion again. No need for Conway to dig for information, these women eagerly spilled all the dirt on Xiaolan. The Xia family didn't divide into separate households. The family consisted of 3 brothers, all living in the same compound, with a total of 6 children. Among them, there were 3 girls and 3 boys. Xiaolan was the second oldest in the family. Xia Xiu, the university student, was the oldest. The 3 brothers in the Xia family were Xia Changxing, Xiaolan's uncle-father, Xia Dajuan, Xiaolan's father, and Xia Hongbing, Xiaolan's younger uncle. Xia Changxing had 1 son and 1 daughter. The diligent Xia Xiu was the pride of the family. Xia Dajuan and his wife, Lu Fen, had been married for many years and had a single daughter, the infamous Xiaolan. Xia Hongbing had 1 daughter and 2 sons. After clarifying the family structure, they began discussing Xiaolan's behavior. She's just a troublemaker, behaving all spoiled and refusing to work. Rural folks don't raise their daughters like this. Unlike her cousin, who has the potential for academics. She managed to finish junior high, although she wasn't very motivated. She's good at picking other people's fruits, though. A few years ago, the county sent the last batch of educated youth to our village. One of the young men grew up well, and he's willing to strive for a better future. I heard he's been working hard both in the fields and with his studies. These two probably connected because they have mutual goals. The young educated youth and Xia Xiu became a couple. Both of them got into university this year, making it official in front of their families. This caused a stir, especially for Xiaolan. She was envious that her cousin got into a relationship with a university student. So, she decided to try to get her cousin's fiancé while her cousin was away. She went as far as undressing in broad daylight and trying to seduce her future brother-in-law. Her future brother-in-law is an honest man and managed to escort the undressed little sister-in-law back home. When she couldn't seduce her future brother-in-law, she ended up with Zhang Erlai from the neighboring village. She couldn't succeed in seducing her brother-in-law, and her cousin didn't blame her for it. The rumors had spread throughout the village, and the elders scolded her. She was so ashamed that she banged her head against a wall and threatened to jump into the river. She was just pretending. She didn't really die. She got kicked out of the Xia family. Her mother, too. These women didn't just gossip, they went into great detail, and their tales were filled with vivid descriptions. They didn't hold back when discussing Xiaolan's embarrassing actions, much to the entertainment of the men who had been working in the fields. Kang Wei couldn't bear to listen anymore. He couldn't believe that the young lady he had met for the first time at the roadside stall, who had impressed him so much, had such a scandalous past. Even in the bustling streets of Beijing, the city girls couldn't match Xiaolan's audacity. She was a force to be reckoned with, and the girls in the city knew better than to tarnish their reputation with such antics. Can't you be more discreet? Can't you just say that she tried to seduce her brother-in-law without going into such detail? Do we have to make it so explicit, even in broad daylight? Kang Wei didn't dare to look at Zhou Cheng's expression. Zhou Cheng crouched silently by the roadside, listening. Both of their feet had gone numb by the time the lively stories about the Xia family had come to an end. He listened in silence, got back into the car, and remained silent. Kang Wei thought to himself, Zhou Cheng had finally found someone he wanted to date, but now his expression didn't look right. He must be feeling terrible. Kang Wei, being understanding, decided not to bring up this name again. He wouldn't discuss this matter further. After all, Zhou Cheng was no longer involved in this business, and he wouldn't have many opportunities to pass through Anqing County. Eventually, he'd forget about this embarrassing incident. Back at the guest house, Kang Wei prepared to check out, but Zhou Cheng stopped him. "What are you doing?" Kang Wei cautiously explained, "Aren't we planning to head back to Beijing? How about leaving tomorrow morning? There's nothing much to do in this place." Zhou Cheng lit a cigarette. The smoke veiled his handsome face, making it hard for Kang Wei to discern his expression. "Who said we're leaving? Put your stuff down." Kang Wei couldn't believe it. Even after all that had happened, Zhou Cheng still didn't want to leave. He asked, "Zhou Cheng, are you planning to confront her?" "I advise you not to. Women can be deceiving." Xiaolan wouldn't admit to it. Who would admit to such behavior? People tend to beautify their actions and make them seem righteous. Zhou Cheng hadn't had many experiences with women, and as soon as he got emotionally involved, he encountered a cunning one. The two were worlds apart in terms of their abilities, and she had captivated him. As for what Xiaolan had said in the restaurant earlier, it was likely a tactic, designed to make him more interested by rejecting him. This only made Zhou Cheng more determined. Kang Wei tried to appeal to Zhou Cheng's emotions and reasoning, but Zhou Cheng wasn't swayed. Zhou Cheng had a strong sense of integrity and leadership, and the younger guys in their group always followed his lead. Zhou Cheng was quite popular, and Kang Wei thought, "He's almost fallen into the hands of a village girl, and I'm getting desperate." He said, "Brother, calm down. Xiao Wei, Do you know why you call me brother? Zhou Cheng's response seemed unrelated, and Kong Wei looked at him in confusion. Zhou Cheng finally spoke, because you're naive. Kong Wei thought, you couldn't possibly be more naive than I am. You've been enchanted by her, and you're not letting go. Tomorrow, go find Zhang Erlai from Shibuzi village for me. He's well known. I believe it won't be difficult to find him. Was he planning to confront Xiaolan's lover? Well, let him do it. It seemed that Zhou Cheng was still not giving up. Brother, you're not coming with me? Zhou Cheng shook his head and said, your sister-in-law is coming to the county tomorrow to sell eggs. I'm afraid she'll be too tired if she goes alone. Kong Wei opened his mouth wide. He had thought that Zhou Cheng wanted to confront Xiaolan. But now, it seemed that he was concerned about Xiaolan getting tired while she had been selling eggs alone. Xiaolan had been doing this alone before, hadn't she? Kong Wei didn't want to argue with someone who seemed irrational. He would find Zhang Erlai from Shibuzi village. By spending an extra day in Anqing County, Zhou Cheng might eventually let go of this idea. Early the next morning, Kong Wei drove to Shibuzi village. It was in the same direction as Dehukin village, and he tried to avoid running into Xiaolan. Zhou Cheng was waiting at the same intersection as before. Before 7 a.m., Xiaolan arrived on her bicycle. Big brother Zhou. Xiaolan stopped her bike, surprised to find him waiting there again. It seemed that her reputation hadn't scared him off. In two situations, men don't seem to mind a woman's reputation, when they are deeply in love with her and don't care about anything else, or when they just want to have some fun and don't intend to marry her. They don't care about her reputation in either case. Xiaolan didn't know which category Zhou Cheng fell into, but his behavior so far showed respect. They could maintain a friendship. You're early again today. Xiaolan nodded. I'm not selling eggs in Anqing County today. I deliberately left early because I want to visit the provincial capital. Chapter 24, A Trip to the Provincial Capital with Zhou Cheng. Heading to the provincial capital, Anqing County was an administrative division under Fengxian City, which was adjacent to the provincial capital. Shangdu was the provincial capital, and the distance from Anqing County was not particularly far. However, the residents of the county rarely went to the provincial capital. Most farmers sold their produce in the towns, and going to the county was already a rare event, let alone going to the provincial capital. From this perspective, it was a mystery where Xiaolan got the courage. I can see that selling eggs can only last for a few days in Anqing County. Are you in such a hurry to go to Shangdu? Zhou Cheng's courage was also quite remarkable, and he had no objections to Xiaolan's behavior. He just didn't understand her thought process. Xiaolan liked talking to intelligent people, and after her rebirth, the first person she could communicate with freely was her uncle, Lu Yong. The second was Zhou Cheng. Zhou Cheng had no objection to Xiaolan's business of reselling eggs. He also offered his judgment, how long can you do this business in Anqing County? Xiaolan didn't hide anything and replied, I'm going to Shangdu to check out the market. I brought some other things with me today that won't sell well in Anqing County. Zhou Cheng took her bicycle and looked into the rear basket. One side was filled with eggs covered with straw, while on the other side, a plastic sheet was spread out with various items piled inside. Eels, Zhou Cheng smacked his lips and said, good stuff. Xiaolan had clearly chosen carefully. Every eel in the basket was as thick as a man's thumb, and this was the season when they were plump and juicy. With the right culinary skills, eels were even better than large Christian carp weighing around 20 jin. This stuff doesn't sell well in Anqing County. Why are you? Zhou Cheng's words stopped halfway. He had wanted to say, why did you choose such a troublesome business? Reselling eggs was already hard work, and now she was selling seafood. Both were not easy tasks. However, he remembered the rumors he had heard yesterday. Xiaolan had been kicked out of her family and probably had no money. Apart from the support of her uncle, no one in her family wanted anything to do with her. Running a profitable business required capital and connections, of which she had neither. Thinking about this, he felt uncomfortable. It wasn't that he believed all those rumors. Just like the scar on Xiaolan's forehead he had seen when they first met, he couldn't believe that someone as delicate as her could endure such hardship. Xiaolan smiled and didn't press Zhou Cheng on his unfinished sentence. She said, anyway, I have to pick up eggs, and I collected eels on the side. It's not troublesome. I've been collecting these over the past few days, and someone brought me 20 jin of eels last night. I'm taking them to Shangdu to see how they sell. Do you know the way to Shangdu? Zhou Cheng hit Xiaolan's sore spot. Xiaolan was a country girl who had never been far from Anqing County. The farthest place she had been was the county itself, and she had never been to Shangdu. Do you have a map under your nose? I'll ask as I go. Nowadays, road signs weren't as dense as they would be in the future, but as long as you had the general direction right, you could ask people along the way. Zhou Cheng didn't know whether to say she was naive or bold. Nowadays, people were reluctant to travel far, not just because of the inconvenience of transportation, but also because the roads were not very safe. For instance, they had never traveled such long distances alone. There were frequent highway robberies, and a person could easily lose both their money and their vehicle if they took a nap. However, this year, strict crackdowns had been initiated in various places, making public security much better. Zhou Cheng couldn't help but worry about Xiaolan traveling back and forth between Qijing village and Shangdu. Let's go. I know the way. I'll take you today. Zhou big brother, don't you have other things to do? This is quite troublesome for you. Zhou Cheng blatantly lied. Kong Wei went to find relatives nearby. He took the car, so we can't leave today. Let's just go to Shangdu. Anqing County is quite small and uninteresting. He emphasized the uninteresting nature of Anqing County with a disdainful tone. Xiaolan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Zhou Cheng had already taken the handlebars of her bicycle. Get on, I'll give you a ride. Xiaolan thought about how the position would be almost like sitting in Zhou Cheng's lap and quickly waved her hand. I'll sit in the back. That might be bumpy, you better hold on tight. Zhou Cheng said seriously, and it seemed like he had no intentions of taking advantage of Xiaolan. He just wanted to make sure she was safe. Xiaolan was amused by his response and realized she had probably overthought it. Both of them had large baskets on either side. Xiaolan's legs were curled up because of the baskets, and when the bicycle jolted slightly, she almost fell off. Instinctively, she held onto Zhou Cheng's waist tightly. At the tail end of summer, Zhou Cheng was wearing a short-sleeved shirt. Xiaolan's hand touched him through his clothes, and she could feel the softness even through the fabric. Zhou Cheng's lips curled up, and he said, "Make sure to hold on." Though his face was not visible, the pleasure in his voice couldn't be concealed. Xiaolan bit her lip, feeling as if she was being teased by a young handsome man. When they arrived in Shangdu, it was already 2 hours later. Zhou Qing hadn't eaten breakfast, and his stomach was growling. Last night, the Lu family's meal was rich, and Xiaolan had eaten some leftover rice and dishes before leaving home to satisfy her stomach. Let's go. First have a meal. The streets of Shangdu were wider than those in Anqing County, and the buildings on both sides of the road were taller. The overall area was much larger, and they couldn't explore it all in a short time. Moreover, Shangdu was livelier than Anqing County. In Anqing County, those engaged in small businesses often kept a low profile, but the small traders in Shangdu were much more relaxed. One street was dedicated to food, offering various local specialties, including lamb stew noodles, meatball soup, tofu, spicy soup, soup-filled dumplings, and white GMO, a type of Chinese bread. They also had a variety of commonly found dishes from all over the country, such as pulled noodles, rice porridge, soy milk, and fried dough sticks. Foods from different regions were all available here. Xiaolan took a deep breath, feeling hunger in every fiber of her being. In her previous life, she had focused on her career in the 1980s and rarely had breakfast. Even when she did eat, it was for sustenance, with no regard for quality or taste. When she became more financially secure, her career got busier, and she had reached an age where her metabolism had slowed down. In order to maintain her figure, she would only drink a cup of coffee in the morning. Later on, she became the Xiaolan who wanted to eat but couldn't afford it. The lively scene moved Xiaolan, and she wondered if she should treat herself better this time. She said, "Zhou, big brother, what do you want to eat? I'll treat you." Zhou Qing saw that Xiaolan was in a good mood and looked particularly beautiful when she smiled. Her eyes were glossy and alluring, and her voice was filled with affection. His own mood had improved as well. "You don't have much money. Don't be so generous. In our hometown, it's not common for girls to treat others. I remember you treated me to noodles that day," and Kong Wei was quite startled. As he spoke, Zhou Qing led Xiaolan into a shop selling donkey meat soup. He said, "Do you want to try donkey meat? Eating lamb in this weather might be too warming. We'll have a bowl of donkey meat soup, a steamer of soup-filled dumplings, and also inquire about the situation in Shangdu." Xiaolan was open to trying donkey meat and all kinds of conventional foods except for reptiles, insects, rodents, and ants. She had been on a business trip to Shangdu in her previous life and had tried donkey meat soup a few times. The taste was quite good, with a steaming hot bowl of donkey meat soup that was neither fishy nor overly heating. All the flavors were perfectly balanced. The celery and green onions floating on top of the soup were also flavorful. In this time period, all these condiments were grown in greenhouses, so the taste wasn't overly strong. Xiaolan had a large bowl of donkey meat soup and a steamer of soup-filled dumplings, but Zhou Qing had an even bigger appetite. He ordered a bowl of soup and 2 steamers of dumplings, and also got a plate of lamb stew noodles from a neighboring stall. After eating, they could gather information more easily. Hearing that Xiaolan was selling eggs and eels, the owner of the donkey meat soup shop said, "If you go to the end of the street, there's a place that serves eel noodles. When business is good, they use more than 10 jin of eels every day. If you go out of the street and turn right, the farmer's market isn't far." In Anqing County, which was quite small, even with workers from 2 factories, the consumption power wasn't very high. However, Shangdu was different. Zhou Qing continued to push the bicycle, while Xiaolan inquired about selling eel noodles. The shop owner took a look at the eels in her basket and promptly bought 15 jin, about 7.5 kilograms, of them. Pork was only 1 renminbi and 40 cents per jean, and eels were 1.1 renminbi per jean, making them an affordable choice for the county's residents. Very few were willing to spend their money on fat pork when they could have eels instead. In Chengdu, with its higher consumption capacity, they sold eel noodles for 70 cents a bowl, with a spoonful of eel strips on top. People there could afford such expenses. Eels were a profitable commodity. Xiaolan used to sell them for 80 cents per jean in her village, making a profit of 30 cents per jean. Eels were more durable than eggs, so Xiaolan decided on the spot to stop her egg business and focus on selling eels. Before November, this business could still make a profit for the next 2 months. Seeing the excitement in her eyes and the smiling expression on her face, Zhuangcheng quickly advised her to stay calm, saying, "You still need to find big buyers. A single eel noodle shop can't buy all your goods." Chapter 25. Good temper doesn't mean no temper. In a small eel noodle shop, is it really worth it for Xia Xiaolan to make a 5-hour round trip to the provincial capital just to sell 20 pounds of eels? It doesn't seem very profitable. In Anqing County, where she used to sell eggs, she could make around 10 yuan a day. It doesn't make sense to travel even further and end up earning less. But if she could consistently sell over 100 pounds of eels each time she made the trip, even if she had to come for 2 days, she could easily make 400 to 500 yuan a month. Well, 400 to 500 yuan a month isn't something to be proud of. Even if she saved up without spending for 2 months, she still couldn't afford the Rolex watch that Zhuangcheng had. Xia Xiaolan gazed at the bustling commercial city of 1983, filled with envy. There were opportunities everywhere, but she lacked the capital to seize them. It wasn't just in the city, the entire country was already heralding the era of reform and opening up. Those with courage, like Zhuangcheng, who dared to engage in smuggling, might have quietly accumulated substantial wealth. Xia Xiaolan knew she was falling behind, but she was full of determination. She said, "Let's ask around shop by shop. Can it be that this commercial city only has this one eel noodle shop? Not just noodle shops, there are also restaurants." The scar on her forehead had healed somewhat, resembling a pink bud. Xia Xiaolan had exceptionally fair skin, and despite being out in the sun every day, she didn't seem to tan. Her voice was particularly gentle, and even when she spoke firmly, it sounded like she was being coquettish in Zhuangcheng's ears. Zhuangcheng was also in high spirits. Although he initially looked down on the idea of making small profits, Xia Xiaolan's enthusiasm had infected him. He said, "Let's give it a try." With Xia Xiaolan's determination, even without any help, she would eventually break free from the gossip-ridden Day village. Walking the bustling streets of the commercial city with the vibrant Xia Xiaolan, Zhuangcheng felt comfortable, and despite never having held her hand, he was experiencing a feeling he hadn't felt in his 20 years of life. The two of them arrived at the farmer's market. The commercial city was vast, with large farmers' markets in both the south and north. Xia Xiaolan had chosen the one in the south. It was already 10 in the morning, and those who had come to buy morning vegetables had already returned. Those who came to the market at this time were typically not short of money and had leisure time. Xia Xiaolan needed customers like them. Setting up their stall was straightforward. Zhuangcheng looked after their stall while Xia Xiaolan quickly scoured the market. The farmer's market didn't just sell food, there was also a clothing stall. Several young women were picking and choosing clothes there, and they seemed dissatisfied with the clothing's outdated styles. The stall owner widened her eyes and said, "These are all from Guangzhou, and they're cheaper and more stylish than the department store's offerings." "Why are you so picky?" The stall owner pulled out a floral dress and, after her words, the women who had been browsing left the clothes behind and walked away. As they left, they discussed, "The clothing at the department store is too expensive. Last time, I wanted to buy a coat, and you won't believe how much it cost, 128 yuan. In a big city like this, it's either the department store or street stalls, one is expensive and the other has poor quality. Isn't there something fashionable and affordable? Let's go, let's go. Who's going to buy his shabby clothes?" What was said unintentionally was taken to heart by Xia Xiaolan. She knew that clothing wholesale in Guangzhou was quite affordable. While she might not have a great sense of fashion, at least she was better than the people selling at the farmer's market. She planned to pick up some trendy clothes in Guangzhou and bring them back to sell in the commercial city. The profit margins on clothing would be more significant than a few pennies here and there. Xia Xiaolan stored this information in her mind and continued to inquire about prices for various types of goods at the farmer's market. Once she had a general idea of the prices, she returned to their makeshift stall. Farmers' markets were open for anyone to set up a stall. As long as they didn't block the aisles and paid the market management fee, they were free to sell. Larger stalls paid more, while smaller ones paid less. Xia Xiaolan didn't argue with anyone about these matters. It was only fair to pay a fee for using someone else's space to make money. She paid the fee without hesitation, and Zhuangcheng had already set up their stall. He had somehow acquired paper and a pen and had written the prices clearly: eggs, 0.15 yuan each, yellow eels, 1.2 yuan per pound. Zhuangcheng's handwriting was just like his appearance, looking very lively and spirited. Several people surrounded Zhuangcheng, and it wasn't clear if these ladies wanted to buy eggs or take advantage of him. Other places sell eggs by weight. Why are you selling them individually? These eels are too expensive. Today, pork is only 1.4 yuan per pound. For an extra 20 cents, I can get a pound of fatty pork. Young man, you don't sound like a local from Commercial City. Do you have a girlfriend? Zhuangcheng was genuinely annoyed dealing with this group of women. When he saw Xia Xiaolan returning, he raised his hand, pointing at her, and said, "My girlfriend is back, and she's the one selling stuff. I'm just here to watch the stall." Xia Xiaolan glared at him, feeling very disappointed that the lady who wanted to introduce a potential match to Zhuangcheng. She said, "Why do you young folks all like those who look like this? You don't understand, round faces are the ones with good fortune." Xia Xiaolan was labeled as unfortunate and her tone turned somewhat cold. She said, "Lady, are you still buying eggs? Look at these big, top-quality eggs of mine. If you don't want to buy them individually, then I'll sell them for 1.5 yuan per pound. These larger eggs definitely wouldn't reach 10 per pound." The lady continued to argue, eggs definitely come in different sizes. Someone picked out the big ones early, and it's unfair to those who buy the smaller ones. Xia Xiaolan agreed, saying, "That's why those who come early get to pick the big ones." Before the lady could respond, the other people crowded her out. They wanted to pick the big eggs, so those who came later were left with the smaller ones. Xia Xiaolan emphasized the principles of handling the eggs gently and not shaking them vigorously, and then let them choose freely. Xia Xiaolan had endured all kinds of frustrations to secure orders, but that didn't mean she was a pushover. She could reject the quality of her products, but personal attacks were a different matter. She paid no attention to the lady who said she lacked good fortune and warmly welcomed her true customer. "Sister, if you don't buy some eels to take home, yes, they're a bit pricey, but eels are highly nutritious. With autumn approaching, you can make an eel hot pot. It's good for the whole family's health. Pork is delicious, but why not try a different flavor? Xia Xiaolan wouldn't kill eels. During that time, people shopped with baskets and cloth bags, and plastic bags weren't common yet. Those who knew how to cook understood that eels needed to be brought to the pot with their blood to have their full nutritional value. Zhou Qing was helping by her side. Despite Xia Xiaolan's delicate appearance, she had a strong character. She dared to run her own business and was willing to stab a hooligan in the eye with scissors. She wasn't the type to overly please customers when it compromised her principles. Anyone who challenged her principles would face unwavering resistance. Although they missed the early morning market, Commercial City had a large population, and people came to the farmers' market throughout the day. Xia Xiaolan had brought 500 eggs and 38 pounds of eels to Commercial City this time. After selling 15 pounds of eels to the eel noodle shop, the rest of her goods were gone in less than 3 hours. She made more money from selling 38 pounds of eels than from 500 eggs. Xia Xiaolan felt that this business was worth considering. After packing up, Xia Xiaolan said, "Big brother Zhou, if you're not busy, I'd like to take a stroll in Commercial City."